They're actually less happy than they were before because they have bitten off too much with their increase in income. That is only natural. We all want to get more out of life. But in the long run, which is going to bring us more happiness, forcing ourselves to live within a tight budget, or having dunning letters in the mail and creditors pounding on the front door? Rule number 5. Try to build credit, in the event you must borrow. If you are faced with an emergency and find you must borrow, life insurance policies, defense bonds and savings certificates are literally money in your pocket. However, be sure your insurance policies have a savings aspect, if you want to borrow on them, for this means a cash value. Certain types of insurance, called term insurance, are merely for your protection over a given period of time and do not build up reserves. These policies are obviously of no use to you for borrowing purposes. Therefore, the rule is: ask questions. Before you sign for a policy, find out if it has a cash value in case you have to raise money. Now, suppose you haven't insurance you can borrow on, and you haven't any bonds, but you do own a house, or a car, or some other kind of collateral. Where do you go to borrow? By all means, to a bank. Banks all over this land are subject to strict regulation. They have a reputation to maintain in the community. The rate of interest they can charge is fixed firmly by law. And they will deal with you fairly. Frequently, if you are in a financial jam, the bank will go so far as to discuss your problems with you, make a plan, and help you work your way out of your worry and indebtedness. I repeat, if you have collateral, go to a bank. However, suppose you are one of the thousands who don't have collateral, don't own any property, and have nothing to offer as guarantee except your wages or salary. Then, as you value your life, heed this word of warning. Do not apply to the first loan company whose alluring advertisements you see in the paper. These people, to read some of their ads, are as generous as Santa Claus. Don't you believe it? However, there are some companies that are ethical, honest, and strictly on the level. They are doing a service to those people who are faced with illness or emergency and have to raise money. They charge a higher rate of interest than the banks, but they have to do this, for they take greater risks and have greater expenses in collecting. But, before doing business with any loan company, go to your bank, talk to one of its officers, and ask him to recommend a loan company that he knows to be fair. Otherwise, well, I don't want to give you nightmares, but here is what can happen. At one time a newspaper in Minneapolis conducted an investigation into loan companies that was supposedly operating within the regulations laid down by the Russell Sage Foundation. I know a man who worked on that investigation. His name is Douglas Lurton, and he is now editor of Your Life magazine. Doug Lurton tells me that the abuses he saw among the poorer class of debtors would make your hair stand on end. Loans that had begun as a mere $50 had soared and multiplied to $300 and $400 before they were paid. Wages were garnished. And, frequently, the man whose wages were attached was fired by his company. In numerous instances when the man was unable to pay, the loan sharks simply sent an appraiser into his home to evaluate his furniture and cleaned out the home. People were found who had been paying on small loans for 4 and 5 years and still owed money. Unusual cases. To quote Doug Lurton, "In our campaign, we so flooded the court with cases of this sort that the judges cried uncle, and the newspaper itself had to set up an arbitration bureau to take care of the hundreds of cases." How is such a thing possible? Well, the answer, of course, is in all sorts of hidden charges and extra legal fees. Here is a rule to remember in dealing with loan companies. If you are absolutely certain, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that you can pay the money off quickly, then your interest will be low, or reasonably low, and you will get off fairly. But if you have to renew, and keep on renewing, then your interest can mount into figures that would make Einstein dizzy. Doug Lurton tells me that in some cases these additional fees had swollen the original indebtedness to 2,000%, or about 500 times as much as a bank would charge. Rule number 6. Protect yourself against illness, fire, and emergency expenses. Insurance is available, for relatively small sums, on all kinds of accidents, misfortunes, and conceivable emergencies. I am not suggesting that you cover yourself for everything from slipping in the bathtub to catching German measles, but I do suggest that you protect yourself against the major misfortunes that you know could cost you money and therefore do cost you worry. It's cheap at the price. For example, I know a woman who had to spend 10 days in a hospital last year and, when she came out, was presented a bill for exactly $8. The answer: she had hospital insurance. Rule number 7. Do not have your life insurance proceeds paid to your widow in cash. If you are carrying life insurance to provide for your family after you're gone, do not, I beg of you, have your insurance paid in one lump sum. What happens to a new widow with new money? I'll let Mrs. Marion S. Eberly answer that question. She is head of the Women's Division of the Institute of Life Insurance, 60 East 42nd Street, New York City. She speaks before women's clubs all over America on the wisdom of using life insurance proceeds to purchase a life income for the widow instead of giving her the proceeds in cash. She tells me one widow who received $20,000 in cash and lent it to her son to start in the auto accessory business. The business failed, and she is destitute now. She tells of another widow who was persuaded by a slick real estate salesman to put most of her life insurance money in vacant lots that were sure to double in value within a year. 3 years later, she sold the lots for 1/10 of what she paid for them. She tells of another widow who had to apply to the Child Welfare Association for the support of her children within 12 months after she had been left $15,000 in life insurance. 100,000 similar tragedies could be told. The average lifetime of $25,000 left in the hands of a woman is less than 7 years. That statement was made by Sylvia S. Porter, financial editor of the New York Post, in the Ladies' Home Journal. Years ago, the Saturday Evening Post said in an editorial, "The ease with which the average widow without business training and with no banker to advise her can be wheedled into putting her husband's life insurance money into wildcat stocks by the first slick salesman who approaches her is proverbial. Any lawyer or banker can cite a dozen cases in which the entire savings of a thrifty man's lifetime, amassed by years of sacrifice and self-denial, were swept away simply because a widow or an orphan trusted one of the slick crooks who rob women for a livelihood. If you want to protect your widow and your children, why not take a tip from J. P. Morgan, one of the wisest financiers who ever lived? He left money in his will to 16 principal legatees. 12 were women. Did he leave these women cash? No. He left trust funds that ensured these women a monthly income for life. Rule number 8. Teach your children a responsible attitude toward money. I shall never forget an idea I once read in Your Life magazine. The author, Stella Weston Turtle, described how she was teaching her little girl a sense of responsibility about money. She got an extra checkbook from the bank and gave it to her 9-year-old daughter. When the daughter was given her weekly allowance, she deposited the money with her mother, who served as a bank for the child's funds. Then, throughout the week, whenever she wanted a cent or two, she drew a check for that amount and kept track of her balance. The little girl not only found that fun, but began to learn real responsibility in handling her money. This is an excellent method, and if you have a son or daughter of school age, and you want this child to learn how to handle money, I recommend it for your consideration. Rule number 9, too necessary. Make a little extra money off your kitchen stove. If after you budget your expenses wisely you still find that you don't have enough to make ends